The champagne glass shattered against marble before she even registered she was falling. One moment she was arranging raspberry tarts on crystal platters in the gilded ballroom of the White Pavilion. The next her knees buckled and the world tilted sideways. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She remembered thinking this was it. She was going to crack her skull open in front of 200 of Seoul's wealthiest elite, and her catering career would die before it ever really started. Then arms caught her. Strong arms that smelled like bergamot and something darker like aged leather and expensive whiskey and smoke from a fire you shouldn't stand too close to. She should have felt relieved. Instead, every instinct she possessed screamed danger. When she forced her eyes open, she found herself staring up at the most beautiful and terrifying man she'd ever seen. Sharp jaw covered in precisely trimmed stubble. Dark eyes that looked black in the chandelier light but caught gold when they moved. A face that belonged in historical dramas. All brutal angles and aristocratic lines that suggested generations of power and violence. He was holding her like she weighed nothing, cradled against a chest that felt like stone wrapped in silk. "Easy," he said, his voice low and accented, Korean with an undertone that suggested years abroad, rich and rolling like dark honey. "I've got you." That's when she felt it. His hand at her throat, not choking her, just touching. His fingers had gone to the necklace she was wearing. The vintage piece belonged to her. Her grandmother gave her, and she has never removed it for 3 years because the emeralds matched her catering uniform, and she thought it looked elegant enough to make her seem professional instead of desperate. His entire body had gone rigid. His fingers traced the stones with something like reverence, like shock, like recognition. "Where did you get this?" His voice had dropped to barely above a whisper, and somehow that made it more dangerous. The ballroom around them had gone quiet. People were staring. "It belonged to my grandmother," she managed, her head still spinning. "Can you put me down?" He didn't. His dark eyes were fixed on the necklace, and she watched something shift in his expression. Recognition, possession, something primal that made her stomach drop even though she was already in his arms. Then he said one word that would change everything. "Ours?" She didn't understand. Before she could ask what he meant, someone was shouting for a medic, and the man was carrying her through the crowd like he owned the place. Maybe he did. Everyone moved out of his way. She should have known something was wrong when the emerald started burning. Zara Adebayo had worn her grandmother's pendant every day for 3 years since the funeral, since the reading of the will, since the whispered warning that came with it. Never sell it. Never remove it in fear. And if it ever grows warm, child, you run. Her grandmother had gripped her wrist with surprising strength for a dying woman, eyes urgent with something that looked like terror and resignation mixed together. Zara had nodded, confused, grieving, not understanding that some inheritances came with prices you couldn't see until it was too late. Tonight, the emerald was scorching against her collarbone. The White Pavilion glittered with a kind of wealth that didn't ask questions. Crystal chandeliers are worth more than most people's homes. Marble imported from quarries that no longer existed. Guests in custom suits and dresses that cost what Zara made in 6 months. She moved through them like a ghost, carrying trays of delicate appetizers she'd spent 18 hours preparing, her catering uniform marking her as invisible. That's what she'd been told when she took this job. Elite events paid triple the rate, but you had to understand your place. Be present but unseen. Serve but don't speak unless spoken to. Exist in the margins of other people's power. She was good at being invisible. 3 years in Hwyang City, building her private catering business from nothing, learning to navigate a world where she'd always be foreign, always be other. Her dark skin drew stares in a country that prized homogeneity. Her accent marked her as an outsider even when her Korean was flawless. But her food spoke a universal language, and desperation had taught her how to smile through discomfort, how to lower her eyes and disappear into the background of rooms where decisions that shaped nations were made over champagne and lies. But tonight, something was different. Wrong. The emerald pulsed against her skin like a second heartbeat, growing hotter with each passing minute. Sweat gathered at her temples despite the aggressive air conditioning. Her vision blurred at the edges, sounds becoming muffled and distant. She'd set down her tray twice already, bracing herself against walls, breathing through waves of dizziness that came and went like tides. "Miss, are you all right?" One of the other servers, a young man whose name she couldn't remember, touched her elbow with concern. "You look pale." "I'm fine," she lied, forcing another smile. "Just warm in here." He looked skeptical but moved on. They all had their own problems. In the gig economy of luxury service, showing weakness meant not getting called back. Zara picked up another tray smoked salmon on black rice crackers, each one arranged with the precision of jewelry, and moved back into the crowd. The event was some kind of political gala, though she'd learned not to ask too many questions about her clients. Politicians mixing with business leaders, mixing with people whose wealth had no clear source. The kind of gathering where everyone smiled and no one trusted anyone. She was approaching a cluster of men in dark suits when it happened. Welcome to Afro-Korean TV Stories, the place for dramatic, emotional, and heart-touching stories you'll love. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. Like and subscribe cause you don't want to miss any part of this intense story. The emerald flared with heat so intense she gasped, hand flying to her throat. The tray tilted. Salmon and crackers scattered across imported marble with sounds like breaking bones. The room tilted sideways, or maybe she did. Voices rose around her, concerned and annoyed in equal measure. Someone grabbed her arm. She tried to speak, to apologize, but her tongue felt thick and useless. The emerald burned and burned and burned and burned, and through the haze of pain and confusion she heard something impossible. Whispers. In a language she didn't know but somehow understood. Asterisk blood calls to blood. The circle closes. The legacy returns. Asterisk her knees buckled. The floor rose up to meet her, cold and unforgiving. Darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, and the last thing she saw before unconsciousness took her was a man pushing through the crowd. Tall, impossibly elegant in a suit that looked like it cost more than her entire year's earnings. Asian features carved with the precision of sculpture, high cheekbones, sharp jaw, eyes like black glass that reflected nothing and absorbed everything. He moved with a kind of fluid grace that spoke of training, of discipline, of violence wrapped in silk. He knelt beside her as chaos erupted around them. Security shouting, guests backing away, someone calling for a doctor. But the man ignored all of it, his attention fixed entirely on her face. No, not her face. Lower. His gaze locked on the emerald pendant resting against her throat, and something in his expression shifted. Shock, recognition, something darker that looked almost like grief. His hand reached out slowly, reverently, fingers hovering inches from the stone without touching it. In the strange, stretched moment before darkness claimed her completely, Zara heard him speak. One word, barely a whisper, in a dialect that sounded ancient and wrong and terrifyingly final. Claimed, then nothing. When consciousness returned, it came in fragments, soft sheets against her skin. The scent of jasmine and something medicinal. Distant city sounds filtered through what had to be very expensive windows. Her body felt heavy, disconnected, like she was inhabiting someone else's flesh. The emerald still rested against her collarbone, but the burning had stopped. Now it just felt warm, almost alive, pulsing gently in rhythm with her heartbeat. Zara opened her eyes to a ceiling she didn't recognize. Vaulted, modern, with recessed lighting that provided a soft, ambient glow. Not a hospital. Definitely not her tiny studio apartment in the cheaper district where she could barely afford rent. This was somewhere else. Somewhere expensive. Somewhere she absolutely should not be. Panic hit like ice water. She sat up too quickly, head spinning, and took in her surroundings with growing horror. The bedroom was massive, decorated in minimalist luxury white walls, dark wood furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows revealing a nighttime cityscape that seemed impossibly high up. She was still wearing her catering uniform, though someone had removed her shoes and covered her with a blanket of material so soft it had to be silk. Her phone was gone. Her bag was gone. Everything was gone except her and the emerald and the growing certainty that she'd woken up in a very beautiful cage. The door opened. The man from the gala entered like he owned the space, which he probably did. Up close, he was even more striking, late 30s maybe, with the kind of refined features that belonged in museums. His suit had been replaced with more casual clothes, black pants and a fitted shirt that somehow looked more expensive than formal wear. He moved with absolute confidence, closing the door behind him with a soft click that sounded too much like a lock engaging. Zara scrambled backward on the bed, heart hammering. Where am I? What did you do to me? He stopped immediately, hands visible, palms open in a gesture of non-aggression that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. "You collapsed at the White Pavilion. I brought you somewhere safe." His voice was deep, measured with an accent that suggested expensive international education. "My name is Cade C.O. Rin. You're in Hanwell Ward, my private residence. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. 6 hours." Zara's hand went to the emerald instinctively, fingers wrapping around the warm stone. "I need to leave. I need to call someone. I need to understand what you're wearing." Cade moved closer, slow and deliberate, like approaching a frightened animal. "That pendant around your neck is called the Viridian Relic. It's been missing from my family for 37 years. The fact that you're alive while wearing it means something very specific happened. Something that changes everything. I don't know what you're talking about." Zara slid off the bed, putting furniture between them. The room felt smaller suddenly, the luxury oppressive. "This was my grandmother's. She gave it to me when she died. It's just a necklace. It doesn't mean anything. Your grandmother." Cade's expression shifted slightly, something almost like sympathy crossing his features. "What was her name?" "Why does that matter?" "Because the relic doesn't pass through normal inheritance. It chooses. It binds. And it only releases through specific conditions that haven't been met in decades." He gestured to her throat. "Try to take it off." "What? Try to remove it? Go ahead." Zara's fingers moved to the clasp at the back of her neck, the simple hook closure she'd fastened and unfastened 1,000 times. She found the mechanism, pressed, pulled. Nothing happened. She tried again, harder, her fingernails digging into metal that suddenly felt fused, permanent. The emerald grew warmer against her skin, not burning but definitely reacting. Panic clawed up her throat. "It won't come off," she whispered. "No, it won't. Not until you willingly consent to release it, and not until certain conditions are satisfied." Cade moved to the windows, giving her space, his reflection ghostly in the glass. The Viridian Relic was created 400 years ago by the founding matriarch of the CEO lineage. It's bound by ritual, by blood, by intention that goes deeper than simple magic or superstition. Women who've worn it have described it as a test, a mirror, a key to truths they weren't ready to face. Welcome back, besties. This is Afro-Korean TV Stories. And honey, buckle up because this story is about to take you on a ride you'll never forget. If you're ready for danger, obsession, and a love story that'll have your heart racing, you're exactly where you need to be. Drop that like, share with your girls, and subscribe because, trust me, you need to see what happens next. And yes, kindly tell me where you are watching from. That's insane. This is insane. Zara backed toward the door, but Cade's next words stopped her. "Your grandmother's name was Adana Adebayo. She worked as a translator for international trade negotiations in Seoul 38 years ago. She was brilliant, beautiful, and caught the attention of my uncle, who was handling certain delicate business arrangements that required discretion. He turned back to face her, and his eyes held knowledge that felt like violation. They had an affair. Brief, passionate, and ultimately tragic. When she discovered she was pregnant, she ran. Took the relic with her, either as theft or gift. The family records aren't clear. She disappeared so completely we assumed both she and the relic were lost forever." The room spun. Zara gripped the doorframe for support. "You're lying. I'm telling you a history your grandmother clearly chose not to share. But the relic doesn't lie. It knows bloodlines. It knows legacy. The fact that you can wear it without dying means you carry CO blood." Cade's voice softened slightly. "Which makes this situation considerably more complicated than simple theft. I want to leave. Right now." Zara reached for the door handle, twisted. Locked. Of course it was locked. She whirled on him, fear giving way to anger. "You can't keep me here. I don't care about your family or your relic or any of this. Let me out or I'll scream until someone comes. This penthouse is soundproofed and 40 stories above the nearest occupied floor. No one will hear you, but you're also not a prisoner." Cade pulled something from his pocket, her phone. He set it on a nearby table along with her bag. "Everything you brought to the gala is here. You're free to call whoever you want. But before you do, you should understand what leaving means. It means I go home and forget this nightmare. It means the relic goes with you, still bound, still active. And there are people in this city, dangerous people who've been searching for it for decades. People who will recognize what you're wearing the moment you step outside. People who won't be as patient or as gentle as I'm being." He moved to a cabinet, pulled out a tablet, and brought up images. Security footage from the gala zoomed in on her collapsed form. The moment you fell, carrying that emerald in plain sight, you became a target. Every syndicate, every rival family, every treasure hunter with connections saw you. And they know you're here now in my protection. Leaving means facing them alone. Sarah stared at the footage, at her own unconscious body surrounded by curious faces, at the emerald glowing faintly in the camera's glare, at the way people had looked at it with recognition, with hunger, with calculation. Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her memory. Asterisk, never remove it in fear. Asterisk, but she'd never explained what there was to fear, never mentioned ancient families or blood legacies or relics that chose their wearers. What do you want from me? Her voice came out smaller than she intended. I want to understand why the relic chose you. I want to restore what was taken from my family. And I want to keep you alive long enough to figure out how to do both those things. Cade's expression was unreadable, controlled, but something flickered beneath the surface. Curiosity, maybe, or something more complicated. The Viridian relic responds to consent, to choice, to the deepest truths of whoever wears it. It can't be forced. It can't be stolen while bound. Which means you and I need to come to an understanding. What kind of understanding? Stay here, voluntarily. Let me teach you about the relic, about what you're carrying, about the legacy you've inherited whether you wanted it or not. In exchange, I guarantee your safety, my family's protection. And when the time comes when you understand what the relic truly means, you'll make a choice. Keep it or release it. But that choice will be yours, made with full knowledge of the consequences. Sarah looked at her phone sitting on the table, so close and yet impossibly far. She could call the police. Except she was a foreign woman in a country where she had no real power, accusing a man who clearly had enough wealth and influence to make problems disappear. She could run. Except he was right about the danger, about the attention that Emerald had drawn. She could see it in the security footage, the way eyes had tracked her, calculated, assessed. Or she could stay in this gilded cage and learn the truth about the inheritance her grandmother had given her, along with warnings that suddenly made terrible sense. How long? She asked quietly. As long as it takes. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I have. Cade moved toward the door, unlocking it with a touch to a hidden panel. The guest suite is yours. This floor has everything you need: kitchen, library, meditation room. My quarters are on the level above. You're free to move throughout the space, but the elevator requires biometric authorization you don't have. Not yet. So I'm a prisoner who can walk around her cell. You're a guest who needs to understand the stakes before she makes irreversible mistakes. Cade paused at the threshold, his profile sharp against the hallway light. I know this isn't what you wanted. I know you're scared and angry and feel like your life has been stolen, but the relic has its own timeline, its own purpose. Fighting it only makes things harder. You sound like you're speaking from experience. Something dark passed across his face. My family has been bound to the Viridian relic for 4 centuries. Every generation it chooses someone, tests them, breaks them, or makes them. I've watched it destroy people who tried to control it. I've also watched it elevate those who accepted what it offered. He met her eyes directly, and for the first time she saw something human beneath the controlled exterior. I don't want to watch it destroy you. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that wasn't quite a lock but might as well have been. Zara stood alone in the enormous bedroom, her reflection fragmented in the dark windows. The city sprawled below like a circuit board, millions of lights representing millions of lives, all of them continuing normally while hers had just shattered into incomprehensible pieces. She touched the emerald again, felt its warmth, its pulse that matched her heartbeat too perfectly to be coincidence. "What are you?" she whispered to the stone. It didn't answer, but it glowed slightly brighter, and Zara could have sworn she felt something like recognition flood through her veins. The next 3 days passed in surreal suspension. Cade had been truthful about the Space Annual Ward was less a penthouse and more a private sanctuary floating above the city. The entire floor was hers to explore, each room more beautiful and sterile than the last. A kitchen stocked with ingredients she recognized and many she didn't. A library with books in a dozen languages, many of them ancient, many of them clearly about the CO lineage and the histories Cade had mentioned. A meditation room with floor cushions and windows that made you feel like you were sitting on air. She saw Cade rarely. He appeared for meals occasionally, always courteous, always maintaining careful distance. He never pushed, never demanded, just existed at the periphery of her captivity like a well-mannered warden. But she caught him watching sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Studying her the way scholars studied artifacts, trying to decode meaning from fragments. On the fourth day, she found the sealed room. It was tucked behind a panel in the library that she'd noticed only because the emerald had grown warm when she passed it. Warmer than usual, almost urgent, like it was trying to tell her something. She'd pressed the wall experimentally, and a section had simply swung open, revealing a small study lined with glass cases. Inside the cases were journals. Dozens of them centuries old, their pages protected behind climate-controlled glass. Each one labeled with a name, a date, a span of years. Zara moved closer, reading the labels with growing understanding and dread. Asterisk Meiji, 1847-1851, claimed at 17, released at 21. Asterisk Catherine, 1923-1925, claimed at 23. Died at 25. Asterisk Yuki, 1956-1960, claimed at 19, chose the family. Asterisk Dana, 1987-1988, claimed at 26, fled. Asterisk her grandmother's name stopped her heart. Zara's hand shook as she reached for the case, pressing against the glass like she could touch the pass through it. The journal was slim, dark leather, filled with handwriting she recognized from old birthday cards and letters saved in a box she'd never been able to throw away. She wrote about her time with the relic. Cade's voice came from behind her, quiet, not startling despite the sudden appearance. All the bearers did. It was tradition, a way to leave guidance for whoever came next. You let me find this room. The relic let you find it. I've learned not to fight what it wants. He moved beside her, looking at his uncle's lover's journal with an expression that might have been sadness. She was terrified. You can read it in every entry. Terrified of the power, terrified of the family, terrified of what accepting the relic would mean for her future. So she ran. Took you or your mother rather and built a life far from here. And you think I should do differently? I think you should understand what you're choosing before you choose it. Cade touched a control panel, and the case containing her grandmother's journal opened with a soft hiss. Read. Learn. The other bearers left their truths here. Some resisted and died. Some accepted and thrived. The common thread is that the relic doesn't enslave. It reflects. It reveals who you actually are beneath the person you've constructed for survival. Zara reached into the case with trembling hands, lifting her grandmother's journal like it might crumble to dust. The leather was soft, worn, marked with fingerprints from decades ago. She opened to the first page and saw her grandmother's young handwriting, careful and precise. Asterisk Day 1. The emerald chose me during the spring negotiation. I felt it happen, a warmth, a recognition, like meeting someone you've known in dreams. The CEO family says it means I carry their blood somehow, generations back, diluted but present. They say I should be honored. I am terrified. Asterisk tears blurred Zara's vision. She looked up at Cade through them, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not as a captor or a threat, but as someone who'd been shaped by the same legacy that was now shaping her. What happens if I refuse? If I never consent to release it? Then you wear it until you die, and it passes to whoever it chooses next. The cycle continues. His voice held no judgment, just fact. But that's not really living, Zara. That's just existing in opposition to something you don't understand. The relic isn't a curse. It's a question, and you're the only one who can answer it. She clutched her grandmother's journal to her chest, feeling the emerald pulse against her sternum. What was the question it asked her? The same question it asks everyone. Who are you when no one is watching? What do you want when shame and fear are stripped away? What would you choose if you believed you deserved to choose? Cade's eyes held something that looked like understanding born from his own scars. Your grandmother ran because she couldn't answer. She built a life of safety and smallness because the alternative terrified her more than staying invisible. Don't talk about her like you knew her. I'm talking about her from what she left behind. From the warnings she gave you, there were really warnings she gave herself. He gestured to the journals lining the walls. Read them all. See the patterns. The women who tried to control the relic broke against it. The women who tried to ignore it were consumed by it, but the ones who listened, who asked what it was trying to show them about themselves, they transformed. They became something more than they'd imagined possible. Zara looked around the sealed room at generations of women who'd stood where she was standing, felt what she was feeling, faced the same impossible choice. Fear or freedom, safety or truth, the life she'd built through careful invisibility or something vast and terrifying and entirely her own. The emerald grew warmer still, and this time she understood what it was saying. Asterisk choose. Asterisk over the following week, Zara read every journal. She learned about Minji, who'd tried to remove the relic by force and died screaming as it burned through her skin. About Catherine, who'd accepted too quickly without understanding and lost herself completely to the family's demands. About Yuki, who'd spent 4 years in careful study before deciding the power was worth the price. And about her grandmother, whose entries grew increasingly desperate as she realized the relic was showing her a version of herself she'd spent her whole life trying to suppress. It makes me see things I don't want to see, Asterisk Adana had written. Asterisk not visions, truths about who I am, about what I want, about the smallness I've accepted because ambition in a woman like me is dangerous. The Seo family would give me power, status, protection, but they would also own me. The relic asks which prison I prefer, the one I built myself, or the gilded cage they offer. I don't know how to answer. In the end, she'd chosen to run, to raise her daughter far from the relic's influence, to build a quiet life of service and survival. And then she'd pass the emerald to Zara with cryptic warnings that now made perfect, terrible sense. Her grandmother had never escaped. She'd just delayed the choice for another generation. Zara wouldn't make the same mistake. On the 8th night, she found Cade in the meditation room, sitting in darkness with the city lights painting him in shades of gold and shadow. He didn't turn when she entered, but his shoulders shifted slightly, acknowledging her presence. "I want to see where it came from," she said. "The Ascendant Shrine, where your family keeps their histories. I want to understand the full picture before I decide anything. That's dangerous. The elders don't know you're here yet. They'll have opinions about a foreign woman wearing the relic. Strong opinions. Then it's time they met me." Cade turned finally, and something in his expression had changed. Respect, maybe. Or recognition that she'd stopped being a frightened captive and become something else. "You understand what you're asking? The shrine isn't just a building. It's the heart of everything the Seo lineage represents. Violence, tradition, power that's been consolidated over centuries. Walking in there means declaring yourself part of that legacy, or declaring myself separate from it on my own terms." Zara moved to stand beside him, looking out over the city they both inhabited in such different ways. "The journals taught me something. The women who broke weren't weak. They were trying to be what others expected instead of discovering what they actually were. I won't do that. I won't run like my grandmother, and I won't submit like Catherine. I'll walk in there and show them exactly who I am, and let the relic confirm it. And who are you, Zara Adebayo?" She touched the emerald, felt its warmth spread through her chest like courage made tangible. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know I'm not small. I know I'm not invisible. And I know I'm done letting fear make my choices." Cade smiled then, rare and genuine. "Then I'll take you to the shrine. But I need you to understand something first." He stood, closing the distance between them until she could see flecks of amber in his dark eyes. "The relic will test you there. In front of the elders, in front of the family, it will ask its question publicly, and your answer will bind you to whatever you choose. There's no taking it back afterward. Good. I'm tired of half measures." The Ascendant Shrine sat in the mountains outside Huayang City, ancient architecture preserved behind modern security that screamed wealth and secrecy. Zara rode beside Cade in silence, watching the city give way to forest, civilization surrendering to something older. The emerald had been warm since they left Hanuel Ward, growing hotter with each mile, like it recognized the path home. When they arrived, the elders were waiting. 7 of them, dressed in traditional clothing that marked them as keepers of something most of the world had forgotten. They watched Zara emerge from the car with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. She felt their assessment like physical wait foreign woman, unknown bloodline, wearing their most sacred artifact like costume jewelry. The oldest among them, a woman whose face was a map of decades, spoke first. "The Viridian relic returns after 37 years, but not as we expected." her eyes fixed on Zara with laser focus. Who are you to wear what belongs to us? Zara Adebayo, granddaughter of Adana who carried this emerald before me, and I'm here to answer the question it's been asking since it chose me. Zara's voice didn't waver, even though her heart hammered against her ribs. Not to submit, not to steal, but to understand and choose freely. Murmurs rippled through the assembled elders. The old woman's expression shifted slightly, something that might have been approval crossing her weathered features. The relic has not glowed so brightly in my lifetime. It recognizes something in you. Truth, perhaps. Oh, potentiel. She gestured toward the shrine's entrance. Enter. Face what waits inside, and may your choice be worthy of the legacy you carry. The shrine's interior was breathtaking wood and stone and sacred spaces that smelled of incense and centuries. At its heart stood a circular platform where light fell through an opening in the roof, natural and precise. Cade led her to it, then stepped back, giving her space. The elders formed a circle around them, witnesses to whatever was about to happen. The ritual is simple, the old woman said. You place your hand over the relic. You speak your truth. The emerald will respond to what it finds. Lies will burn. Fear will bind tighter. But genuine choice, clear intention, honest recognition of self that it rewards. Zara stepped onto the platform, into the column of light that made the emerald blaze like green fire against her throat. She closed her eyes, hand covering the stone, and felt it pulse beneath her palm like a living heart. The question rose in her mind, clear and unavoidable. Asterisk, who are you? Asterisk, I'm Zara Adebayo, she said aloud, her voice carrying through the sacred space. I'm a woman who spent 3 years making herself invisible because I thought safety meant smallness. I'm someone who inherited fear along with this emerald and let that fear define my boundaries. The stone grew hotter, but she didn't flinch. But I'm also someone who's tired of apologizing for existing. Someone who's ready to build power on my own terms instead of accepting the scraps others decide I deserve. I'm claiming space in a world that told me I shouldn't want it. The emerald flared brilliant green, light exploding through the shrine like dawn breaking. Zara gasped as she felt it, the clasp at her neck unlocking, not falling but reshaping, the chain lengthening and strengthening, the stone itself seeming to pulse with approval. When she opened her eyes, the elders were staring at her with something that looked like awe. The relic has accepted your truth, the old woman whispered. It no longer binds you as a test or trial. It acknowledges you as a chosen bearer who has chosen in return. You may remove it now if you wish, or wear it as a symbol of the power you've claimed. Zara's hand went to the clasp. It opened easily now, smooth and simple. She could take it off, walk away, return to the small life she'd built from careful invisibility. But as she held the emerald in her palm, feeling its warmth, its weight, its recognition of everything she'd just declared about herself, she realized the truth. She didn't want to be small anymore. She fastened the chain around her neck again, the emerald settling against her collarbone like it had always belonged there. I choose to wear it, not as prisoner or heir to someone else's legacy. As my own person building my own power on my own terms. The elders bowed. Actually bowed, recognition of something fundamental shifting in the ancient order they'd maintained for centuries. Cade stepped forward, and when he looked at her, she saw pride mixed with something warmer, something that had been growing between them over stolen conversations and shared vulnerability. You've changed everything, he said quietly. The relic hasn't freely accepted someone in 3 generations. They'll want you to stay, to become part of the family structure. To all stay, Zara interrupted, but not as subordinate or decoration. I'll build my own empire here. Food, culture, spaces where people like me can exist without making themselves small. And yes, I'll work with your family when our interests align. But I'm not absorbed into the CO lineage. I'm standing beside it as equal. A smile played at Cade's lips. That's going to cause problems. Good. I'm done avoiding those. 6 months later, Zara stood in the kitchen of her new restaurant, the kind of establishment that drew international attention and local reverence. Private dining for the elite, but also community meals for immigrants who needed to taste home. She'd built it with CO resources and her own relentless vision, creating something that existed in the spaces between worlds she'd spent her life navigating. The emerald rested against her collarbone, warm and constant, no longer a mystery or a burden, but simply part of who she'd become. She'd learned its language the way it pulsed when she made decisions aligned with her truest self, the way it cooled when fear tried to make her small again. It wasn't magic. It was mirror, reflection of the woman she was choosing to be every single day. Cade appeared in the doorway, dressed down but still impossibly elegant, carrying flowers he'd probably paid too much for. Their relationship had evolved slowly, carefully, two people learning to trust after lifetimes of self-protection. He wasn't her captor anymore. He was her partner in building something new from the ruins of old expectations. "The elders are asking when you'll visit again," he said, setting the flowers on the counter. "They want to document your journey. Add your journal to the collection. Tell them I'm too busy living to write about it yet." Zara smiled, tasting sauce, adjusting seasoning with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she wanted. "Maybe in a few years, when I have perspective. And what will you tell the next woman who wears the relic? What wisdom will you pass down?" She turned to face him fully, the emerald catching light, her smile holding all the hard-won truth of transformation. "I'll tell her what no one told me. That the relic doesn't trap you. Your own fear does. That freedom isn't the absence of binding, but the presence of choice. And that sometimes the scariest thing you can do is admit you want power, admit you deserve it, and then reach out and take it with both hands." Cade crossed the kitchen, pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers in a gesture that was becoming their own tradition. "You terrify the old guard, you know. A foreign woman reshaping ancient structures. They don't know what to do with you. Then they can watch and learn." Zara kissed him softly, tasting possibility. "I'm just getting started." Outside Hoyang City glittered in the evening light, millions of lives intersecting, millions of choices being made. And somewhere in the mountains, in a shrine that had witnessed centuries of women facing impossible questions, an empty case waited for a journal not yet written. A story still unfolding. A legacy that had finally found someone brave enough to claim it not as inheritance, but as transformation. The Viridian relic pulsed against Zara's heart, warm with approval, and for the first time in 400 years, it had found someone who understood the secret it had been keeping all along. It had never been about choosing the relic. It had always been about choosing yourself. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Subscribe. Drop a comment telling me what you think happens next, and hit that like button.